Welcome back, YouTubers. I'm Dr. Greg. Today we're going to look at an idea that was to become the core thought of my PhD thesis, creating confidence amongst complexity. This idea could change the way you think about your role and hopefully help you understand why project managers sometimes think they're delivering a successful project while their sponsors and stakeholders are dissatisfied with the whole experience. If you want this mystery explained, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. So let's get started. Welcome to Dr. Greg's Guide to Project Yinyang. I've been a project manager in the construction sector for over 20 years, and during that time I've noticed some very strange things. And no, I'm not talking about other project managers. I've seen projects that have been completed on time, on budget and to the required quality, where the project manager is celebrating the success of the project, but the sponsor and stakeholders have not been satisfied with the outcome. And I've seen projects that have run over budget and over time, where the project manager feels like a total failure, but the sponsor and stakeholders are as happy as a pig in mud. Now, if these were just one-off events, then I wouldn't have thought much about it. But it wasn't. I've seen it happen time and time again over the years, and it got me wondering why. So I set out to research what was happening. The end result of my research was the idea of Project Yinyang. To explain this idea, we first need to understand the concepts of the philosophy from Taoism. In the Taoist sacred text, we read, 1 gives birth to 2, and 2 give birth to 3. In simple terms, this passage talks about how life creates the forces of yin and yang, and how these two forces create something else, a third phenomena that exists only in the perfect balance of the two forces, a third completely distinct force called yin-yang. The most recognizable representation of the concept of yin-yang is the TAIJITU. The TAIJITU depicts the duality that exists in all phenomena. It represents clarity. There is no grey in the TAIJITU. Each force is clearly defined, having its own strengths and weaknesses. Both are discrete forces, but at the same time completely complementing the other. Each force has its own identity, but at its heart lies the seed of the other, showing us not only that one cannot exist without the other, but there is an interdependency that must exist between the forces. Within Taoism, yin and yang mean nothing in themselves. It is only when they're used to express a particular relationship that they take on a meaning. Hence, yin and yang only become meaningful within a specific context and when used to express a specific relationship. So for our video today, this context is project delivery. In this particular context, yang represents the objective and the rational. Yang communicates ideas using a scientific logic and systemic discourse. It uses critical success factors such as time, cost and quality that can be objectively measured to prove that the project is a success. In other words, Yang represents the technical mastery we need to efficiently manage the tasks associated with projects. In contrast, Yin represents the subjective and intuitive. Yin communicates ideas using an emotional logic and systemic discourse. Yin represents the expectations and feelings that stakeholders use to decide if they're satisfied with their experience of the project. In other words, Yin represents the personal relationships and emotional intelligence required to effectively manage the human factors associated with the project. So why is it important to understand the separation of these two ideas? Well, let's look at a common project management misconception. When we as project professionals complete a project on time and under budget, we assume that that means that all the stakeholders must be satisfied because we can prove the project is a success. Now, while this sounds like a reasonable assumption, it has a fundamental problem. It assumes that success, which uses a scientific basis of assessment, in other words, yang, transposes into satisfaction, which uses an emotional basis for assessment, in other words, yin. Throughout my career, I've delivered projects which have been technically successful, but in which the stakeholders were not satisfied with the outcome. Conversely, I've delivered projects which have technically been a disaster, but in which the clients have not only been satisfied with the result, but have gone to commission my services again to deliver new projects. When either of these occur, I used to find myself thinking, WTF? That was until I realised that in order to achieve a balance, I needed something else. What was happening? Well, according to Taoism, one had given birth to two. In other words, the project had given rise to demand of two elements, managing the tasks and managing the human factors. But two had not given birth to three. In other words, I didn't have these two aspects in balance. Usually, I was labouring under the misconception that by achieving the time, cost and quality criteria, I was automatically satisfying the emotional needs and expectations of the people involved in the project. I hadn't yet created Project Yinyang. I hadn't created that balanced relationship between managing tasks and leading the people. So what does Project Yinyang show us? Well, for one thing, it shows us that project delivery can't just be about successfully completing tasks. And it can't just be about satisfying the people. So instead of getting hung up on whether we should be project managers or project leaders, we need to understand that we must be both at the same time. This has been another presentation from Enso Consulting. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. I'm Dr. Greg. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you again soon.